Doug, and as we said, my lovely wife Pamela over here. Uh, just real quick about her journey, her little part of the journey. About 6 years ago, not quite 6 years ago, she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at age 52, which is pretty early, not totally unheard of, but early onset can be what the doctors say aggressive, which means holy cow. Within a year, she had lost all of her hobbies, she used to teach quilting, she used to repair Model A generators and starters for the old Fords, shipping them off to Norway and Iceland. We had also been church leaders, small group leaders for 20 years. She was a registered Boy Scout leader. She was the first female scoutmaster to camp out with the boys in the entire state of Oklahoma. But about a year into the disease, she'd lost all of that. A year later, she could not read a magazine, couldn't even watch television, which requires almost nothing. A year after that, she lost her speech, was not able to communicate. And right now she's in the last phase. This is not, as you can tell, she's kind of sleepy, kind of, she's got the little shuffle walk. That's not the drugs. That's her muscular, they call it the progress of the disease, which is a stupid term. We're measuring the wrong thing. But through this, I wanted to share with you the two biggest lessons I learned. And the biggest lesson I learned, the biggest surprise to me, is God is faithful. We say, okay, well, pray for strength, brother. God will get you through. And we've got those wonderful verses in the Bible of that He's not going to give us so much that we can't handle by resting on Him. And that we can endure. And it's amazing. People who knew me from before, I'm an old Air Force guy. My call sign in the Air Force was the Axe Man because of my patience in dealing with the red tape and just the slow pace of everything in the world. How can you do this? How can you still hold on to her and deal with her and find love with her? She's still precious to me as well. I tell them every morning I wake up and I say, God, yesterday you got me through. You gave me the patience and love to endure. And that Greek word that means not just crawl across the finish line, it's victorious. You're on again, big guy. And he does. That was surprising to me, which growing 40 years in the church, you'd think, well, why is that a surprise? But oh well. The other biggest surprise to me, I'd done a lot of study and reading on the disease when she was first diagnosed. So I was ready for the decline in her mental acuity. I was ready for the decline in her ability to take care of herself physically, and the challenges of trying to, I was working a job for a long time. And now I've got to do the house and the laundry and cooking and the laundry. We do a lot of laundry at our house. Both of us are messy. What I was not prepared for was the isolation. Shortly after she started symptoms, when they first come out, friends that we used to go over to their house or they'd come over to our house, they just, they were just busy or didn't think to call us, but we ended up being kind of pushed off to the side there. We don't have close family. Interestingly, my son has also really pushed back. He's the only real close family we've got in this area. And it pains him to see his mom in this condition. He was over last night for a couple of hours. Before that, he'd been over in the end of January. So it just too painful for him to be around. When her behavior got to where we could no longer have her in church, because pastors don't like it when, before she had a constant verbal patter that she kept up. And if she did that in the middle of sermons or prayer time, they get upset, or if she gets up and walks around, which she used to do a lot of pacing, they don't want that either. So socially we couldn't just have her out. Well, church went on without me, and a couple of times I'd run into people and, oh, we've got you on the prayer list. That was a help to some extent, but it was just an isolation. And they're coming out more and more. Recently, you guys probably saw some of the articles and things they've had on the effect of loneliness on the health of people, and that affects us as well. We're forced loneliness, I guess.
My turn?
Good place to chime in there.
Okay. Okay. What we were going to do is kind of tag team here. So it's my turn. Then when I get down, and getting beat up here, then I'll tag him and he'll take over again. But I'm coming at it not as the caregiver, but as a caregiver to caregivers. And just a little background. I already mentioned that I've been a pastor for quite a while, and when in 2010. I went on hospice as a chaplain, and one of the first visits I ever made was in Rossville as a chaplain. And I went with another fella, and I was in training, and we went to what was called a locked unit. It was one of their memory unit. And, it's almost embarrassing to say this, but I had not been in a facility like that in all my years. And I just remember the feeling of shock, going in there, people shuffling around, some of them, you always got to make sure the door's closed or they'll escape. And the thing I saw that bothered me the most was a little lady with a doll. And she was like a baby doll, and she was taking care of it like it was her baby. And she's holding it and petting it and taking, like this. And that really, really got me. I felt like to be honest, I felt like I was in hell. I felt like I'd gone to hell right there. And here a while back, I was back in that facility after about 5 years. And I thought, what is it? Have they changed or what? And I had become accustomed to going into those places and working with our patients, all in different levels or stages of the disease. And so I become more used to it. But it was a scary thing at first. And so I come at it from the angle of as a pastor and as a chaplain at this. And what I want to do today is talk a little bit, kind of step back, rather than I've given you this this little pamphlet with a lot of material in it, and there's a lot of good stuff on how a church can come alongside the caregiver in providing specific things, and it's in there. But I want to share with you something today that, in a way, takes a step away from that to the church's attitude or approach toward this whole idea, and then we'll open it up for discussion. But people, when something like this happens, there's just a natural, it's almost like he talks about isolation. It's just part of this thing. We are used to people being able to come to church, and they are involved in the services and in the activities and the ministries. But this comes in to their life, and it becomes more and more difficult for them to come to church. And so how can we minister to them? Because oftentimes out of sight, out of mind. And I can't tell you how many times I have gone to see a patient who's been in a nursing home for a number of years, and this is not, I'm not throwing guilt out or anything, because it's happened to me, okay, as a pastor. But you go, as I go as a chaplain, do you have a church? Well, we used to have a church. Yeah. What's happened? Well, the pastor left, and a new pastor came, and then another pastor came, and here I've been here, and we've been basically falling through the cracks. They don't say it that way, but we're kind of forgotten. And how can we develop or work in a way as pastors and as congregations to minister to people in this kind of life situation? And let me just share a little bit with you, because I have some statistics here. The crisis, many churches work in what's called a crisis response approach. A crisis comes up and they swarm in, you know. Somebody has an accident, you know, or somebody has a heart attack, or whatever. And so the pastor comes, people come, letters are sent, cards are sent, food comes in, and then after a period of weeks, maybe the crisis has passed, but the family's life has been changed. And so their needs may not be quite as crucial or as demanding as they were right at first, but their whole life has changed. But in the meantime, people have quit calling, quit visiting, quit sending food, quit sending cards, and they're left alone. They're going on, but they basically have lost their church as well as everything else that they've lost. And so here's the deal. Let me read a little bit to you here. The crisis response approach assumes that it is out of the norm for people to deal with illness, dying, or grief for extended periods, but this is out of sync with reality. 90% of Americans will deal with serious illness for a year or more during their lifetimes. And the question for most is not if they will face a long illness, it is when. A crisis response model also assumes that needs will not increase. However, the country's changing demographics tell a different story. We know this, we're aware of it. We're part of it. Some of us are part of this thing called, baby boomers, who, this big lump of people that have changed America since, when we were born. And I remember as a kid, they had to build special rooms for schools. We were putting up all these things, and then as our lump of kids grew up, the school I went to when I was a kid, they closed it down. It's not even there anymore, and because that neighborhood got older and new kids didn't come in and so on. So you see, but here we are now. We're getting to this older stage, and we're going to be creating greater needs for the younger population to address and deal with. And as churches, I was thinking about this the other day. As churches, we are not. You hear, they say, well, the kids, they're the church of the future, and then they say, I don't know what that means. The older people, or are they the church of the past? Why don't we just say we're all the church of the present? And so here are the little kids, and then as they're growing older, and the young adults, and then the senior adults, the church of the present, who have needs and have capacities and areas in which we can minister to people. And so, even if faith communities were to double their staff and double their lay leadership, with the growing needs, we're not going to be able to keep up with it. And so here are some questions that I'm wrestling with at my church. And then I want to suggest the beginning of a solution. What can we do to ensure that all people will remain connected with their church through the seasons of life? And how can we mobilize care and support for people living with illness, end of life, and grief? And third, how can we become a supportive community for all people during these challenging times through our education, through congregational care, through our communications, and through our facilities, making them accessible to people? And behind that is really the question, what does it mean to be a community of faith? And rather than thinking in terms of ministry in the crisis, think in terms of building community. When congregations are able to offer a strong sense of community, individual members are not the only ones who benefit, but all of us benefit. The whole church benefits. By seeking new ways to reach out and incorporate people who are living with illness, end of life, and grief into congregational life, churches open themselves up to the insights that these challenges bring and gain the opportunity to learn from people going through them. You think about it, we are really good, for example, with when a child is born into our congregation. You know, we have little ceremonies we do. We don't baptize them, but we dedicate them oftentimes. We celebrate their coming to us. We have a special place for them where they can go and be comfortable and play and learn about Jesus at their place in life. And as they grow, that the facilities change to meet that need. People that are called to minister to those are being trained and equipped and mobilized to reach them. And as families grow and age, the crisis response approach, when sickness comes or aging comes into life, is in essence we're saying, oh my, what a surprise. When it's not a surprise, it's coming. My wife says because of hospice, I guess, I'm talking about death a lot, and I said, we're going to die someday. It's not going to be long. And she says, you're sure an upper. You're sure. I said, and I'm saying, I don't feel negative. I'm just thinking about the reality of things, and it's for all of us. And our churches deal with it all the time. And so, I'm not offering a solution. As much as I'm saying, thinking in terms of the reality, it's coming, it's here, it's going to grow as our churches get older, that these needs can be met. And if we can think like we did with our kids when they're babies in the nurseries, and we were providing for that area of need and providing facilities and people who were focused on that, if we can do that as we're thinking in terms of Doug and Pam and people like them, it'll make a world of difference. Now I'm going to tag team here, okay? and just ask, maybe I'm too general here, but does what I'm saying ring a bell with you? And is there some more specifics that maybe we could talk about?
Yeah, I think it certainly rings a bell, and as well, I mean, if you have questions or comments, let's kind of open it up, right?
Yeah.
Get some cross discussion, but I did have, there was a church that we were going to for a while, and when we got to where Pam could not be with us, we could not go to church. One of the elders said to me, oh, I understand why you're not in church, and, you know, when you can come back and be with us, we'll be happy to see you.
Oh, my.
That was his answer. You know, and I've had a lot of people want to come and they say, well, call us if we can do something for you. Call us if you can, you know, what can we do for you? You know, what, run laundry, mow yard, I guess, but you know, what I really want them to do, it gave me a new, in fact, one of the articles that we had on the website, it gave me a new perspective. If I'm in this position, which I'm sure I'm going to be someday, there'll be somebody in our church that is going to be homebound. I mean, we're picking on Alzheimer's people right now. Women age 72 or older, 1 out of 8 will get Alzheimer's, will develop Alzheimer's. Part of that 90% figure that he talked about. My response is not going to be, here, I brought you a casserole. My response is going to be, I'm bringing a casserole next Friday. You guys bring the dessert, let's sit down, and we'll share a meal together. We'll just talk. You know. Any questions or comments that spark in your mind, Darren?
Are you talking about, like in Bob's church, for instance, setting up a ministry in your church specifically for this? Where you have volunteers, like First Southern had a nursing home ministry for years and years. I assume they still do, I'm not sure. Viola Webb used to head that up. I got recruited by her when I was just a layperson at First Southern. And I did that every Thursday night for several years.
Thank you.
Nursing home. So, are you proposing, or would you?
You know, every church is, I'm glad you asked that, but every church is different. And I think we need to, you know, we can assess ourselves and what do we have to offer. And then combine that with community's resources, because there's all kinds of things, all kinds of agencies that can help. And if we're aware of what we can do, because the need is so overwhelming that sometimes we go, my goodness, I don't know what difference we can make here in this. But, and my mind goes to a lot of different things, but let me just share with you a couple things. When I left my church in 2010, and I came back last year at the beginning of 2014, and we had tried some things before. I tried Stephen Ministry, and for some reason it wasn't clicking, and so it kind of went by the wayside. But is everybody familiar with Stephen Ministry?
A portion of it.
Portion.
My wife does that quite a bit as far as the grief care.
Yeah.
The periodic mailings. We do that
Explain it.
portion, but that's it.
Explain it.
Okay. Stephen Ministry is an equipping ministry that trains the church, the lay people in the church to provide caring service, mostly listening kinds of things to people in the congregation or in the community. But we did that, and like I say, it didn't go as well as we'd like, but I came back and I found that they had gone through a period without having a pastor for a little bit of time, and then they'd had some other kinds of troubles as well. And the congregation, I feel, had changed in its attitude. They had put together a wonderful food pantry, and they were very aggressive in finding people who needed it in the community and we're not talking about just giving out a sack of groceries occasionally. Some families are getting have gotten the bulk of their groceries over a regular period of time. And so we have a food pantry. We've always had a lady in our church who's a nurse, and she's done, she's a nurse, what is that called? Parish nurse. And she's still doing that. And they had developed a garden thing. And all of these different, these things that they were doing. And I was just talking with the parish nurse the other day. I said, you know what I'd like us to do? Well, one other thing is I put together, I asked for a group of guys to meet with me that we could just sit down and they could just, ask the tough questions. We could talk together about the needs of the congregation. And so with that, I asked also the nurse that maybe we might want to develop care plans for people who are going through problems, And in hospice, like in any medical field, there's always these care plans that you develop. And you sit down and you list what the problem is, what's going on, and then what the plan is to deal with that, and then you check on that, Every so often you sit down and you reassess it, and then and it's, you're not waiting for the Spirit to move. You have a record. And these are some things that I've been wrestling with. It's always in development. It's not where you'd like it to be, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. This book, The Unbroken Circle, has a whole bunch of plans that I've been reading from it on how to do some of these things. It's written, it is from Duke University, so we know they have a good basketball team. It's written from a more general mainline church approach to things. But if you can get over some of the funny language, it has some real good practical stuff. I have everybody's got information in their packet on this book if they want it.
Well, two words that I really stuck out when Doug was talking. He mentioned that a lot of times when you're experiencing what he's been through, you feel forgotten, you feel isolated. And I was just wondering if, as an association, if we, and as the churches having individual programs to make sure that their own congregations' needs are met, but also having a program through the association where the associational churches actually rally together for individuals in maybe the other churches or ministers in the other churches, or if we're organized on that, or if it's what you were, if you guys were thinking was possible, or something you'd like to propose or see, or.
And it doesn't, I mentioned I'm at Rock Hill Church with Jim Presnell's church there with the college group. One of the reasons I'm there, partly is because Jim didn't want to be the oldest guy in the room. I mean, let's be honest. But the other reason is Jim was introduced to me through young Mr. Taylor over here. And, yeah, I know where my bread's buttered. And Jim was talking about myself and Pam to his group, and 4 or 5 of the young ladies in that church said, well, why don't we help out? So each Sunday now, since June of last year, I can go to church, and Pam and I walk back and forth in the very back of the church for the singing. She does respond to the songs. And then when the quiet part starts, the girls take turns. They take her and they go out and they walk around the grounds, they walk in the building, and they sing songs with her. When we do this next Sunday, there's going to be a food meeting, which are always good. They call them common meal. I call it food meeting. Potluck of Baptists.
Yeah.
And the same thing, someone will sit with her while I'm getting her plate and getting my plate and getting everything and help out. That's gone a long way to just kind of dragging me back into the group.
I like what you said about how we plan for stages of life. And when pregnant ladies, you old-time guys remember what they call cradle roll. They would take pregnant ladies and roll their unborn baby into, so we could start counting them even before, and when they come, it was just a program recognizing, excited about this new stage of life, this family's going in with this new one coming, and then you'd have cry rooms, and you do everything for these different, I'm just wondering, in a large church, where you almost have the same kind of thing, a Sunday school class for cradle little kids, you have a Sunday school class that is on top of the different stages and issues and what's going on. They know what's available in the community, they know the issues, but when you're in a small church where you have maybe one or just two Sunday school, adult Sunday school classes, who's that fall on? Or is that why it falls through the crack, is because, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was doing education work at Covenant, we would call and enlist people to work in the nursery. First Sunday of the month, second Sunday, third Sunday. That's kind of what you're talking about with Pam, right? Except it's on another stage of life. Just those kind of simple things.
I think that people get called to certain kinds of ministry. And I'm not talking about, well, you know what I'm talking about. And I feel like God worked in my life to call me to the ministry with hospice and working with older people at their end of life and those things. And one of the things that did it was, as a pastor, I was kind of resentful at times because the older people were so stuck in the mud and didn't want to change, you know. It was so hard to get anything past, to move. And I would start feeling resentful about that. And I was in a small group with another guy in the group. He really rebuked me about it. And then I went to the movie called Up. Do you remember has anybody seen that movie? It's a cartoon, and it's a hilarious, funny movie about this old guy who, his house is in the middle of the city, and they want to tear it down. And in an act of rebellion, he used to sell balloons, you know, floating balloons. So he just hooked up all his old balloons and put air, you know, helium in them, and the house just went up in the air. And here he was, and he ended up with a little kid with him by mistake. But the movie just touched me. I went to see it 3 times, of the challenges of aging and all that was with that. And that's when I ended up in hospice. But there's people in our churches that are gifted for children's ministry, and there's people in our churches that I believe would be gifted for this. And so we can provide training, and maybe opportunities in some different ways, you know, for these people to be equipped so they can help. And it doesn't have to be a big program. It's just meeting the needs of people where they're at. So, is that what you're talking to, Richard, or asking about?
Yeah, I think so. What are you talking about when you said association-wide, or churches partnering together to do what would?
I know I remember being in choir practice on Wednesday nights at First Southern, one particular Wednesday night, and Viola Webb's sitting. She's the only one sitting we're up in the choir loft, and she's the only person sitting out in the sanctuary. And I'm thinking, she must be waiting for a ride or something, you know. So we get done, and we dispersed, and I start down the aisle, and she steps out right in front of me. And I had sung with my guitar in church every now and then, you know. She says, "Mr. Whitebird?" I said, "Yes." She says, "The Lord told me that you need to have that guitar in our nursing home ministry." But they had a ministry. The church had set up a ministry. She was the administrator of that, and also a firm recruiter. I just said, "Yes, ma'am." And for the next several years, on Thursday nights, I went to the same nursing home every Thursday night, and there were other volunteers in our church, because it was a program, because it was a ministry, actually set up, and the church supported that financially. It happened every night of the week somewhere with somebody from our church in a nursing home, and I was wondering if what you're talking about now, not in this case, it wouldn't be seniors or nursing home necessarily, but people like Doug, you know, and their families, focused on that. I know out of Barrington, John Thacker's caring for his wife. I know Randy, your wife's been sick, and I know I've heard John mention those same words that Doug said. I just feel alone. I feel isolated. His church, I know, is loving him, you know, the best they can. But if if our churches had a ministry specifically set up like that, I mean, if that's feasible, or if that's what we wanted to do, and as an association, if we had a plan to make sure that. Because I know when I talked to you, Richard, we talked about, you know, a lot of times we'll have an associational meeting, pastors, you know, and we'll say, remember so-and-so, or a letter goes out to the associational churches, and, you know, Pastor so-and-so's really going through it. But that particular pastor in need has never met the rest of the pastors in the association. If we had something in place that would minister to them regardless of that, you know, even if they weren't known, where we just not put them on a prayer list, but have a minister in place to make sure that financially we came together as an association and contributed to those things, and as well as, you know, the ministry that was set up to accomplish that as well, as far as volunteers going and doing whatever it was, like mowing grass or sitting and visiting or having dinner or whatever it is, just to encourage them and assist them, minister to them.
Yes, I have.
That was the question.
I have kind of a couple questions. I've thought for years that there's a dynamic that needs to be pulled together, or just a chemistry, I guess, if you will, with our youngest of people and our oldest of people. I do I'm at Rossville, what do they call it, Manor, I guess, or I think it changes names from time to time. I do rotational basis service there once a month, and we've gone over to Christmas caroling, and I see the people light up when kids come in the room.
No, yeah.
They become animated. And I take a look at that, and we have the young kids that, I mean, we movie and pizza, you know, how are we training them with that? We live in such a self-centered society. If we could take those kids and go, you know, to places where people are lonely, you know, how effective would that be all the way around? And I guess my question for Doug is, well, first of all, is the suggestion that we kind of revamp the church, the building, and things, and try to make things happen there? Or should we just start penetrating the community and going out into the homes more? What's more effective, and what would minister to you better, to have someone come to your home? That's what I think I'm hearing. Yeah.
That's a really good, I mean, it's a real good question, and I don't think there's one answer, because why are people, you know, what are they dealing with?
Right.
In some cases, they can get into the church, so if you had a paraplegic, for example, that wanted to come to Sunday school, can he? But in my case, for example, I mean, she's real sedate now, but she's been a real terror. I mean, a 105-pound 2-year-old is what I used to
Yeah.
tell people. And 105 pounds is what she used to say about herself.
Yeah.
Never was true. It's okay. We'll let that slide. Yeah, I mean, other houses are not, and churches, buildings are not set up for a 2-year-old that size, outside of just some of the other complications of someone that doesn't have good control over themselves.
Yeah.
So in my case, it'd be very difficult for me to, I would be very aware of
Yeah.
what her needs are there.
But here's the thing, if they say, hey, call me, tell me how we can help, you're not gonna ever call anybody, are you?
Well, no, I mean,
But I don't know,
See,
I just need to be,
yeah, I mean, I've got the lawn needs mowing. Well, I've got a John Deere tractor, and she'll come out. She loves being outside, and she doesn't. In many ways, I'm very blessed with the way the disease has hit her. She never had that wanderlust, so she can come out and be in the front yard, pulling up grass, pulling up whatever or just walking back and forth, and she's having a ball. I don't need physical help. So, I mean, you're gonna come help wash up? There's been about the third time we have to do wash up in the same day, I need someone to come. I'm talking to God then, that's like, okay, seriously, right? I mean,
Then lawn mowing's therapeutic.
lawn mowing's great, I'm going outside, I gotta whack something
Right.
down, let me tell you. Yeah.
You ever need respite where somebody comes and just stays with her so you can get away and go to a movie or
Well,
whatever?
yeah, and that's, some people, quite a few people have offered, well, I'll just come and sit with her. But I don't need to be away from her. Being with her, now this is me too. Being with her does not frustrate me. It doesn't cause me angst. There are quite a few people in my position, whether it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever, they are isolated, they're locked in, they start, you're talking about the grief counseling, it's all part of that. They feel isolated and they start the blame game. Well, if it weren't for you, I'd be able to. And I guess if that had been my case, then yeah, I'd say, oh yeah, come over and just sit with her, and just be there, just so I can get away.
It's
for a
gonna
while.
require some creativity because every scenario is different.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you say you deal with the loneliest, I'm the other side of that spectrum. I'm inundated with people all the time, and I hear of course, this one's cancer, I hear the cancer story on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it's like I can't get away from it. And then when you're away, you feel like you should be there, and when you're there, you feel like, all the other things that
Yeah.
should be going on. It's a challenge, but if we could just do something to heighten awareness, and then individually, we just have to be creative, I think, on how to address these things, and be supportive.
And be realistic about what they're going through,
Yeah.
and it's not wrong. People who are, I mean, the caregivers, Miss Pammy, we know where this is ending up for her.
Yeah.
There's no use hiding that, and
Mhm.
we've got the answer. We as Christians, we know how the story ends, and we know what's going
And
on.
it's a hallelujah.
Yeah, there really is,
Yeah.
but it can be a real trying time for some of those caregivers who are like, why did God allow this to happen?
Yeah.
And, why me? We were in church all those years. It's tough. I was invited to a group, it was a caregivers group, not the Alzheimer's, but it was a caregivers group that was put together over in Kansas City, Overland Park, neck of the woods, and they approached me about coming and speaking to them about dealing with personal grief and share some of your secrets. Well, yeah, I'd be very interested in coming and telling people. But we're not associated with, any particular groups or churches, so we don't want you sharing anything. You can't really, don't talk about God. All right, well, my message is simple. You guys are hosed. I mean, like I said, I'm the axe man. I mean, seriously,
True,
what?
though.
Yeah, if you
Absolutely.
have no
Right.
answers, if you're telling me I can't share the answer,
Yeah.
okay.
They-
This is a whole different kind of ministry, you know, of an outreach, because we're so, whatever side the church may be, like here in the association, you know, First Southern is probably the biggest church, and Emmanuel Baptist Church is probably the smallest one right now, but we're so used to just thinking about the lost.
Mhm.
You know, how we're gonna reach the lost, and we get all excited about someone coming to Christ. You know, and of course, that should be the top of the list of ministry, of outreach, but this is my first time hearing something so different. You know, and it can be challenging, you know, who can you turn to?
Yeah.
If all of a sudden somebody, you know, begins to start feeling that way, and, you know, the member comes to the pastor and say, what can you do? You know, and
Yeah.
And by the way, we're all familiar with the passage when Jesus says, "Depart from me, for I never knew you." And you say, "Well, why? Why?" You know, and he says, "Because I was sick and you came to visit me. You know, I was in prison and you came to see me." So the ministry to the sick, to the people that are trapped in their homes, you know, whatever, is endorsed by Christ, you know. And I know you know that, but I find, maybe it's just because of where I'm cut out, but I find being able to go into a home or go in to see a family, and when somebody, you know, and when they do their assessment, somebody on the team says, "Well, Bob, we're sorry, these people are not Christians, but they want to see a chaplain." Inside, I'm going, great. Because I have an opportunity to minister to them and share with them wherever they're at in their walk, in their life.
I still wonder if the idea with the young kids, I mean, even children, man, there's some children that are just so spiritually in tune. And it's so exciting. If we don't build that compassion in them, I mean, just look at the other end of that. If we fail completely to do that, and these group of churches continually get older and older, and one spouse is taking care of the other, and that's really all you've got, and everybody's scrambling, just trying to maintain, and there's no one.
Yeah.
But you have all this energy with the young kids looking for something worth
Yeah.
the investment of their time. And if we can build that compassion in them, I think that may be where a lot of our answer is. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly been the case with me, with
Yeah.
the kids, basically. I mean,
They
they're
pick you up, don't they?
20 years, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know, the enthusiasm and, of those groups. And culturally, we're changing, you know, because it used to be, you had family.
Right. Oh, yeah.
We had, well, Pam and I were military. We have family places I don't even know we had family, you know. And you had friends. Remember going over to people's house to play cards and stuff? How many do that nowadays? We're becoming isolated as a nation, and we've got our Facebook in front of us.
We're electronically self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was curious about the demographics part of it too. You say, you know, the boomer society moving up. And I know we're not having children like we used to, period, but the immigration, is that keeping pace with what multiplying used to do? Or not, numbers wise? I mean, are we gonna continue to have the influx of people? Will there be an end to the baby boomer thing? Will we notice a backlash when that generation moves through? Or is there still enough people coming in all the time to fill that void?
I don't know for sure.
I don't know
those are
how
things I
the
don't
numbers
know.
crunch in that.
Yeah.
Well, the last poll from 2014 said 82% of Americans claim to be Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a high percent of church members too.
Yeah, they claim to be Christian too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know, like you're saying, you know, like the Latino population that
yeah,
keeps, that's coming in, and
yeah, I mean, you hear the
they're
staggering
having,
numbers in
they're
the
having more
reports, and I
babies
just
at higher
wonder.
rates and
Yeah.
everything. And, yeah, and I don't know, when the baby boomers die out, which will happen eventually, will there be all of a sudden this empty spot at the top, or, you know, fairly
Yeah,
empty?
yeah,
So, those are good questions. I
And
was
we
gonna
get-
say,
And those numbers coming in, like you're talking about, the Latino coming in,
yeah,
if they're not a part of the church, you know, if they're not, if all cultures aren't made welcome in the church, the central
Yeah.
church, well, now we're creating these little pockets, you know,
Yeah.
where we're not able to enrich each other's lives.
yeah.
I think our, you know, the church-wise, I think probably when we're talking about doing anything more than a particular church might be doing, it's hard enough to motivate people in your own congregation, especially the older ones. And what, it's true with the younger ones too, because the ones that have kids, especially, you know, in the spring it's baseball, in the fall it's football, and on and on and on it goes. Or it's too cold, or it's too hot. You know, they make excuses too. They busy their lives with so much activity. I know it's hard to get people, maybe even pastors are overloaded sometimes, you know, with enough ministries that they're trying to juggle. But I'm trying to imagine what the answer would be to where we can make sure that nobody slips through the cracks, nobody gets forgotten, or that we somehow you know, develop some kind of system in our association that, so, you know, if somebody gets put on a prayer list or mentioned at a meeting, that they're not just forgotten, you know, well, yeah, we'll pray for them, but, you know, but actually something ministry-wise actually happens for them, whether, and if you're in a small church and maybe you don't have the resources to fund that or support that, associationally, we could probably have the resources to do it. And like the pastors, for instance, somebody in Doug's case, as a member of a church, he may not be able to communicate his need to the association, but his pastor could. You know, the pastors of these churches know what their congregations and their members need, and they could communicate that need. And so associationally, we could pool our resources to make sure that you know, people have a need like whatever it is, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional or spiritual or material even.
And the demographics, about immigration, within the SBC, out of the 40,000 congregations, or 45, 10,000 congregations are ethnics. About, I guess, one out of 5. Ethnics, in other words, we're talking about Hispanic, Chinese, Filipino. And so just in California, in a given Sunday, you have about 60 different languages, you know, going on. And so one of the things that the executive committee of the SBC is doing is they've been forming those advisory groups, you know, so how to meet the needs or the challenges that there is. And one of the advisory groups, one of the things that was brought up was Dr. Frank Page's daughter that committed suicide, you know, a few years ago. He wrote a book on that. So that was addressed in one of those advisory groups, and so out of that ministry came out. You see, how do you deal with, you know, of a family that's going through something like that? And I mean, we're talking about the executive director of the SBC, about his daughter. And so it is challenging because the demographics have changed, and they're going to continue changing. Not so much about the baby boomers, that's part of it, but the new generation coming in. You know, how to, even in our association or here in the association, you know, you're going to compare with all the associations that we have. It's not so much challenging, I don't think here. I was thinking about Cal Valley, but it's not Cal Valley, it's,
Flint Hills.
you know, and it's not as challenging as going to association in Texas, you know, where you have more of a diverse population, you know, and so how can you address, you know, those needs there? But here, yeah, it is a big challenge of one, every 5 church is an ethnic in the SBC. And it's gonna continue changing.
Yeah.
So how we're gonna approach that, you know, with those different kind of needs and, you know, sicknesses that there is.
And the challenge is at both ends as well. You know, not only is it the challenges in the church members to be involved with each other, but the caregivers, many times, isolated as they are, they're very reluctant to either ask for help or welcome help. I know at least one other caregiver he doesn't want people over to his house because he's a little embarrassed about his housekeeping. You know, Rich will tell you, I'm not embarrassed at all. If you see dirt, I'll hand you the broom if it bothers you. You know, go for it. But that's the willingness and American ethic of, you know, I'll handle it myself. That's a challenge to get past as well, even if you know someone needs help.
Is the greatest need just friendship that you experience right now, would you say?
Yes. Yes. Well, and for many years, we did small group ministry together, and
Yeah.
we would do lesson planning, and we'd talk over things and be able to share, oh, I found this verse, or I saw this,
Yes.
and be able to talk to that. And, you know,
And a lot of people, just friends, your friends feel awkward, we don't know what to say, so we just don't go.
yeah, we just don't
And
come
you
over.
have a lot of that.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of that.
Yeah.
You're talking, doing something association-wise, I'm sure in this association, there are people who are certified home health care, CNAs, CMAs, LVNs, all that. Maybe see if people would like to volunteer, you know, get put on a list, and like, if you need to go do something, hey, you know, can you come over and be with my wife in case she needs something? You know, people who are certified to do that, to where you're not going, you know what, I've gotta go to Home Depot, I've gotta do this, I've gotta do that, and I don't wanna leave her home, or, you know, whatever. If there's somebody who's certified to do the task, maybe it might say, okay, well, you know what, if I have to take a little longer, it's not a big deal, because I know there's somebody there that's certified to do that knows what they're doing.
So that's what ministry versus professional.
But
Other people that wanna
it's not per
minister,
se
but-
professional, for the simple fact of, it's people in the association that have said, you know what, yeah, go ahead and call me. I don't mind, you know what, if you need help, call me, I'll be there.
Mhm. And there, by the way, there is a little wrinkle on that, because when I was working, the last couple of years that I was working, which I'm retired now, so I'm avocational, Pam was in a daycare. I'd drop her off at the daycare and then come back and pick her up. Well, it took doctor's orders to get there. So now there's a doctor's document that says I can't leave her alone unless there's a professional person. So some people have come over and said, well, we'll stay with Pam for 4 hours or 5 hours. They really can't. I mean, they're not they're not able to pick up that liability, and I'd be wrong to do that as well. So that's a little difficult.
But if they're licensed. with
If
them-
they're licensed,
Yeah.
then, yeah, exactly, so that goes right back to what you're saying. If I had to leave her at home, I can still, now that her behavior has changed, I can put her back in the daycare. I call it putting her in the slammer, for, 5 hours up to 8 hours a day, so I can, when I have to do my stuff. Otherwise, she goes to Home Depot with me, and she has this thing she does that I call shrilling. It's almost like Arabic women that are got that la, 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 the really, really high, piercing call. So there have been several stores we're walking around and she's doing her little thing, and people are I didn't touch her. I'm sorry.
Well, didn't First Southern have didn't they have a counseling ministry
They do.
for a while?
They
Still.
do.
Now,
We
just
had-
normal lay people would, that wanted to be involved in that, would go through some kind of training, get some kind of certification to be involved in that?
Well, the people that actually ran it were professionals, with degrees in psychology, or Dr. Zobel, Dr. John Zobel, you know John.
Yeah.
Got a doctorate in ministry and trained in that, and of course, he worked for SRS also, so.
So would those that took his training receive some kind
I
of
don't know about that.
certification at the end of that,
He's
where they
retired
could?
just recently from all that. He's getting
Yeah.
up there in years now. The
Good.
CR ministry is growing. I mean, they Celebrate Recovery, they call it, where they meet on Friday nights. There's a lot of folk that come to that are mentally challenged, and a lot of people going through addictions, and they deal with all kinds of stuff like that. Houston, I can't remember his last name now, he's kind of in charge of it now. But they used to have people who had degrees and were certified, you might say, with the state.
So I'm wondering if that same type of model would work if you set up a ministry to address the issues we're talking about, where there was some training. And I know how busy people are. I know when I'm on the road for 3 months, when I get home, don't ask me to do anything. I'm gonna sit in my recliner for a while and sleep in my own bed. I get tired too. Everybody's tired, everybody's busy, but everybody has time to do what they like to do.
So perhaps
Always.
maybe, with.
I don't know if that's a possibility.
Maybe an
It needs to be
advisory
there.
council, that can be kind of organized, and besides the other, meetings that there is in the association, there
So-
can be.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is, at least with our smaller churches where we may not have people who are licensed or certified, or maybe we don't have anybody that have a passion for those kind of things. If as an association we provided some kind of training that certified people in some fashion, that were on kind of a list. Is that what you're saying, Pete?
Well, yeah, I mean, just whatever the hindrance is, like he's saying, there's certain people that couldn't go do what they actually wanted to do because they didn't have that certification, or they weren't qualified for one reason or another. To have that be a part of whatever the ministry was, first on the local individual church level,
Right.
setting up that ministry within our churches and really promoting that. It's what we're called to do anyway, as a church.
Isn't it easier, I'm sorry, isn't it easier in a small church, though, to really know all the people and kind of,
Yeah, and they
Isn't
should be
there a
doing that for their
network?
own,
isn't there a
on that
network
level.
there of people that,
but there might be cases where in a small church, they don't have the resources to provide what somebody in their church needs.
Like a parish nurse,
Oh, I
you
see,
mean,
I see.
or?
Or, I know, in John's case, it was a vehicle. His wife is paralyzed, or she's not completely, well, is she completely paralyzed now? She needed they needed a handicapped vehicle to move around in. And I don't think their particular church had the resources to provide that. And,
I was thinking about some of these things, and it occurred to me that sometimes we duplicate, you know, what's already there, and it may not be there in the church. And there are so many community resources, and now, just as an example, we have a person in hospice, and she's a social worker, and my appreciation for social workers has grown immensely over this time, because mainly her job is to know what the resources are, and then to help match people up to them, whether it's a veteran who doesn't know that he has certain benefits available through the VA, or the area agency on aging, Jayhawk, and, you know, what we can do as a hospice, and just all these different resources that we can tap into, and some of them are free.
Is that something maybe we need to look at, is informing
Well,
pastors and leaders?
I could almost see and I'm not trying to overrule what anybody's doing or anything, but I could almost see that the primary role of association would be education, and having some resources available in terms, not the resource, not necessarily always having to do the things, but to know where you can go for things.
Connect them.
And because a lot of people just need to help with that. My brother, who is a physician, just was diagnosed with a form of Parkinson's. It's not Parkinson's, it's something else. It's going to end up like that. And he just had to retire. He's younger than me, and he just had to retire as a doctor. And they're scrambling. Here he is with all his knowledge and everything. They're scrambling for what to do. And from everything from unemployment, you know, all these things. And I was talking with a social worker at my office, and she said, well, you know, here's some things you can do. I was amazed at just some thing. I called my sister up and said, here, try this, and it helped her. So there are a lot of resources, and we can think in terms of the local church. You know, it's kind of like the local church has the primary responsibility, you know, for their families, and the association can help in other ways, or maybe link some people in the church at large. But then there's also the community as well. And if we can know those things, that can really help.
Would that be a good learning lunch? Having a social type worker type person to, I guess they could talk through that, but they'd also have that in writing, kind of a reference sheet for different agencies and different avenues.
There's some of it in your pamphlets I gave you.
already?
But
Okay.
there's some. But for the local, and like our social worker could come sometime. I'm volunteering her, but she's just excellent at this kind of thing. That's her job. That's what she does.
Maybe we don't need to know all that, we just need to know her number.
That's true.
So our focus is really caring for caregivers, right? Caring for people like Doug that are caring for somebody else, coming alongside of them and encouraging them, and meeting whatever, you know, the need is. And that would, you know, that crosses all the ethnic lines. I would say to the ethnic churches, they need to be involved doing the same exact ministry. Not so much I mean, they need to be coming alongside caregivers that they know, and supporting that. I mean, that's what we're talking about today. As far as, I know our demographic in America has changed. Our demographic in the American churches are changing. You know, I mean, it's just not necessarily for the best, but just trying to think what the solution would be, that if we pooled our resources, which we do through the association, if we have specific ministry locally and in the association set up for that, to accomplish that. If
When you
that's
say-
something we want to,
When you say resources,
human resources, volunteers, something to organize that, somebody to head that up. Not that I'm volunteering. But not that I'm unvolunteering either.
You had your name half written down.
Well, I see the need and I have compassion
Yeah.
about it. Obviously Doug has been involved in ministry for a long time, doing that with and for other people. But I know that he needs the fellowship and the friendship that we talked about, and same thing with Randy. You know, they're on a voluntary basis. I mean, it's like I say, it's just saying, what can we do to meet whatever that need is that you feel? You know, how can I care for you? You know, you name it, you describe it, and we'll do it. We'll see that it gets done through our local churches and through our through our association. You know, have it set up to where those people aren't forgotten and they're not isolated. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. What this is about. How do we find a plan to accomplish that?
And I'm sure that there are people that get that call in, can have that compassion, and it has to be, it really has to be some kind of a calling, you know, to be involved in something like that. I'm sure that there are some that are willing to do that with compassion.
My concern with that also though
Do you have
is,
something, by the way,
Me?
yeah.
Actually, I was really sick last year, and I spent about 6 months just completely isolated. And I don't remember who it was, but they walked up to me and said, "I don't know how to ask you how I can help you." And that's, you had said earlier, that's, you know, say somebody called you up and said, "Hey, I made a casserole, I'm coming over Friday." I would have loved that when I was sick. But what's the best way for us to tell a caregiver, if you need anything, call me? Because, I mean, if you got to know me and the things that I've done, you really can't surprise me with much. But what's the right way to ask that and to verbalize that to someone that's a caregiver? Because I'm guessing you've probably heard that a lot. And then the first time you call them and say, "I need this," and they go,
let me get back with it.
let me get back with you, and then they never call back or whatever. So how do we say that in a loving, caring way that you know that this is someone that wants you to be able to lean on them when you're having that rough time?
I think it's a repetition of the message and a regular, I mean, it's offered not from a check the box, all right, you popped up on my to-do list this week to call you, so I'm calling you, how are you doing, can we help you? Comes back to something you were saying too, of putting Bob Mumford used to call it putting feet on your prayers. You know, if you've got a prayer list in your church, and most every church has a prayer list, right? Maybe there should be another associated set of boxes. Okay, this person we're praying for this one because has there been someone within the church, you know, not a program per se, but did they have a friend? Do they have is there an elder watching them? Is there just a buddy they used to sit in the pew next to? Is someone in contact with them? And that's a lot of times too, that's the person with the church that I used to go to when we were in Chicago. We had a real close friends. And if we needed something, the church could go to that person and say, "Hey, you know, your buddies, what do you think? What would you think?" And then maybe you just call that person up and say, "You know, we've got about 4 people with lawnmowers that want to come over and mow your yard and have a burger. We're gonna grill on the burger or something."
So